Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, do me one quick favor and leave us that 5-star rating and review. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stars. All right. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Today, we got a good one. We're going to be talking to Brett Farmiloe. Brett Farmiloe is the founder and CEO of Marketers, an SEO company that connects small businesses with customers. If you Google digital marketing company, you'll likely find Marketers on the first page of the Google search results nationwide. Now, his first company was called Pursue the Passion, which was a career education startup that took Brett and his friends across country, and they interviewed people that they found passion in their work. Now, since getting off the road, Brett has delivered over 100 speeches from Alaska to Miami, and he's authored the book, Pursue the Passion. You can learn more about that at pursuethepassion.com. We want to welcome to the show, Mr. Brett Farmiloe.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Brett, thank you for coming on. So I gave a little bit about your background. Why don't you take a moment and fill in some of the gaps there?
Yeah, just about me. Dad of 3, about that minivan life, and get out of quarantine, living in Scottsdale, AZ, and spend most of my time thinking about how we can enhance the SEO results for the small businesses that we work with. That's pretty much it. I got a boring life.
Well, before that life got boring, you were on the road a lot. So you talked about giving over 100 speeches from Alaska to Miami Beach, which have to be 2 completely different environments. Tell me a little bit more about, when you started Pursue the Passion, what were you doing? Why was this something that you were very interested in with your friends and kind of going around the country, creating these events?
Yeah, so I'll back it all the way up to college graduation. I was an accounting major at University of Arizona and kind of had this predestined path to become a corporate auditor, which is the job that I had accepted, but was feeling a little uneasy about that. And speaking with other soon-to-be college graduates, I was realizing that most college students face this question of like, what am I going to do after graduation? And then most adults face this question of what am I going to do with my life? And no one really has a great answer to it. So I decided to start a website that would essentially document the career paths of people who had found passion in their work, and decided if I was going to start that corporate auditing job in September, that I would have a full summer to do whatever I wanted, which in my mind was to buy an RV and travel around the country and interview people about their career paths. And so that's what I did for the first summer. I bought this really crappy RV off of Craigslist in Tucson, named Maggie Miracles, and we lined up interviews with everyone who we thought would be really cool to talk to. And so that cool list consisted of Lute Olson, Hall of Fame basketball coach. She was the very first interview that we did. Cruised up to Phoenix, interviewed the namesake of the business college that I went to, Carl Eller, who's kind of like this advertising, also probably in the Hall of Fame for advertising, and then started to cruise out to San Diego. The RV broke down and continued to break down until we got to San Francisco. So long story short, that first summer, interviewed about 75 people, got this website started, and it was awesome. Went into that corporate auditing job, and about 3 months in, the site started to get some real traffic and started to get these inbound inquiries from people who were like, hey, you should, when you guys come to Cincinnati, you should interview so-and-so, or when you go to Nashville, you could stay on my cousin's couch, or like, all this stuff. And so it really inspired me to do 2 things. Number 1, to continue with that site. But number 2, it basically like introduced me to the power of search engine optimization. And when you put content out there, and the connections that you're able to make in the real world is really inspiring. So flash forward about 10 months into that corporate auditing job, I quit that job. I decided to get another road trip together. After a long search, found a corporate sponsor, took another tour with 4 friends. We went 16,000 miles, 38 states, interviewed 300 people, and that was pretty much that project. After that, the sponsor acquired the projects. We went to go work for them, which working for them pretty much consisted of giving keynote speeches around the country, as well as founding a program for other high school students to do informational interviews in their communities so that they could continue to add to the site. And it was a really cool thing. So that's kind of how I got started with marketing and the backstory.
That's amazing, man. And you did this right out of college, to really, focusing on learning what you want to do, telling these stories, got back into your career, your formal career, and decided, you know what, I really enjoy this a little bit more, jumping out, doing the interviews. And you said you did 38 states, and you say 3,000 interviews?
300 interviews, 16,000 miles in an RV, which I quite honestly, I have no idea how you do not need a special license to drive an RV. Like any 16-year-old who can get a license can hop in an RV and just start driving. That's a little scary.
Yeah, that is. You just made me realize I should pay more attention next time I see RVs on the road.
Yeah.
300 interviews, right? I mean, that's powerful right there. And what was your biggest takeaway? I mean, out of interviewing 300 people on how they're pursuing the passion, what was kind of your number one takeaway that you gleaned from those interviews?
The one that still sticks with me today is that people have insights that need to be unlocked, and there's not enough people who come along and give people a platform or an opportunity to share their life accumulations. And so it's still kind of a mystery to me of why really successful people spent 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours with 4 recent college graduates. And like, why would a CEO of a company that's managing 15,000 employees take an hour to just sit down with us? And it's because people don't put the microphone in front of the right people at the right times so that they share those insights. So that to me was not so much what people told us, but just really the opportunity of like that people have these life accumulations that aren't shared in any kind of form. And it's getting a little bit better now that we've got so many different podcasts coming out and so many blogs and different opportunities. But that was one of the biggest takeaways from the whole thing.
That's awesome. And to your point, I mean, that's one of the things that you find when you talk to people who are successful is they are happy to share insights of their journey and how they were able to accumulate success and the things that worked for them and didn't work for them. And it's just a matter of how you actually structure that time. If you call someone up and say, hey, can I talk to you for an hour? The answer is probably going to be no. But if you can get a camera, get a microphone, and structure it somehow where you're documenting it and it's going to be worthwhile for them, maybe it's a video or something that they can review later on, it's much easier to have those conversations. Kind of crazy, but I mean, you've seen it as well, and I've seen it with the podcast that you can have conversations with people who otherwise probably wouldn't give you the time of day. And it's not out of disrespect or anything like that. It's just they don't see how they benefit versus if there's a platform that you can share with other people, that's really where they see that opportunity, because it's not just you and that person having the conversation. They're entrusting you to share that dialogue with the masses and helping other people get value out of that conversation. With that said, one thing you said that jumped out was, as you were creating content, you really started to figure out SEO and figuring out how to get your content in front of more people. Talk to me a little bit more about how you were able to learn more about SEO and ultimately what led to creating marketers.
Yeah. Just by doing it, like learning about SEO is a total mistake. And I didn't even know what SEO was probably for like multiple years of doing it without even knowing it. So really it came down to creating content and creating unique content that wasn't available anywhere else. And so, flash forward to that, to the job that I had post road trip, and after the speeches and after some of the momentum from the trip wore off, became basically like a social media manager at a time where Twitter and Facebook was just kind of getting populated. And so that kind of got me into a marketing role, and then began to think about SEO and content creation. And so long story short, left that job, became a freelancer for marketing, and basically started working with a handful of companies doing all things, doing their SEO, doing their email marketing, their PPC, their social, and kind of learning as I went along. And around maybe 2016, after doing this as a freelancer for probably about 4.5 years, I got our website, marketers.com, to rank on the first page of Google for the term digital marketing company. And when that happened, there's two things that did happen. Number one was I was getting calls from all around the country, all around the world, of people who were asking me one question, which was, tell me about your digital marketing company. I'm like, well, it's just me and my 2-year-old who's bouncing with no pants on this trampoline next to me. What do you want to know? Because I can't even help you because I'm at full capacity from a client perspective. So I got sick of telling people no. And I also got sick of hearing stories from other small businesses who could not find the marketing help that they needed, because there's more marketing agencies than coffee shops where I'm sitting at right now. And it's really hard to find marketing help, especially when you're a small business, especially when you're not the priority for a marketing agency when you approach them. So decided to actually live up to my Google ranking and start a digital marketing company. And over the course of doing that, we just celebrated our 4-year anniversary. Probably about 2 years in, I began to realize that being a digital marketing company didn't mean being all things to all people. We started by offering email, PPC, social, SEO, and I did an audit of my email inbox over the last 2 years of all the feedback that clients were giving me. And it was interesting to take a look at all the hate mail that I got as a result of offering services that we weren't really good at. And then all the, fan mail that we got of people whose lives we dramatically changed through our SEO. And so I decided to specialize in just SEO for marketers probably like early 2018. And since then, it's been awesome because when you do specialize and we break down this huge fragment of what is marketing and what is digital marketing, you get down into the nitty gritty of these different categories. And even SEO might be too broad. Like if, for the listeners, it's like, okay, SEO for real estate, or do you just do link building, or you just do technical SEO, or do you just do content? So that's kind of how I got started with it. And that's where we're at now.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that story and giving the transparency that you were able to rank in Google as one of the top digital marketing companies, even though you were really a one-man shop and more so freelancing, kind of doing these projects. So as you were getting these calls and you had to decline the work because you just didn't have the capacity to take on more work, even though Google in their analytics had you ranked as one of the top companies there. I think that's really telling on two fronts. One, just understanding the power of SEO, but then also, like, as a small business owner, how do you take advantage of opportunities? For you, you decided to launch this company. I love what you said. You said you finally decided to live up to your Google ranking. And I love that. And I just really can see how you took that initiative to build the company. And then you started talking about, you offered a lot of digital services, right? Email, PPC, which is pay per click. So as you're doing online ads, you only pay if someone actually clicks on the banner ad or the link there. SEO, which of course is search engine optimization. And you realize that you were getting hate mail for the stuff you weren't that good at, and you were getting a lot of love and great, referrals and testimonials for the work that you were good at. Tell me about that process, because I think as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, regardless of the business, you recognize that there are opportunities to create revenue, and most people don't want to turn down a dollar. And if you have a potential client that is telling you, hey, I need help with my digital marketing, can you do SEO? Can you do email marketing? Can you help me with PPC? Most small business owners in that space are going to say yes, simply because they don't want to say, hey, I can only do SEO, but you're going to have to find someone else to do the other things, especially if they know whoever else they go to can probably tell them, hey, we can do your SEO. And for most customers or clients, many of them are looking for that one-stop shop solution, even though they may recognize that going to 4 different specialists may give them better results. From a cost standpoint, maybe it's a time and resources standpoint, it just doesn't seem to be the option many of them go through. So can you just elaborate on, what that was like, kind of starting out and deciding to offer up kind of this full suite of services, and then ultimately how you made that decision to say, you know what, we're just going to specialize?
Yeah. So I'll weigh in it from a business owner perspective first, and the accountant in me can weigh in on this too, because when you do offer all things to all people, and something happens where you don't have a great process to back up and support each one of those areas, and when you don't have a great process, you don't have great profit. And so you might be accepting dollars from a top line perspective, but you might be paying for it from the expenses that you're doling out for salaries, or the mess ups, or like the grants that you're making to clients, and it really eats away at your profit. So specializing allows you to have a good process in place, which then allows you to fine tune the profits that you're able to generate. So I think that really helps from a decision making standpoint. And then there's also a level of, I guess, confidence in having expertise, so that if a small business is coming to you, what I've found is that most of the time they don't know what they want, which is, I think one thing I could talk about a little bit more, because they come to us and say, hey, we need email marketing, or we need pay-per-click advertising, or we need SEO. And inevitably it gets back to what the ultimate marketing objective is for them. And then it's just deciphering what's the best route to get to that marketing objective. And if it's leads or if it's sales, then it's like taking a mathematical approach to figure out, okay, how can we get more leads and more sales? Is email marketing right for you? If so, is your list do you have an email list? Is your list 10,000 people? And if so, if your goal is this, is your list going to help you get there? And if not, then you need something else. Same thing with SEO. If you're in an industry where the keyword search volume is X, and you rank on the first page, and you mathematically deduce what the click-through rates are, what the expected conversion rates are you going to get to your objective? And if the answer is no, then you've got to support it. But if the answer is yes, and we can clearly prove that if you're successful in search engine optimization, that you're going to hit your business goals, you don't need anything else. You don't need to dabble in social. You don't need to do email. You don't need to do PPC, because SEO will get you to where you need to be. And, our business is definitely proof of that, because, I know that as a result of ranking for a digital marketing company, we're probably going to get 2 to 3 clients every month, based off of what our close rates are, what our expected traffic's going to be, expected clients from the leads that we get. So that there's a real comfort in knowing that.
No, great answer, man. I really appreciate that context. And just to recap that, the first part was, by specializing, it allows you to create a process that is repeatable and is profitable, as opposed to, having to figure out things, bringing on maybe different specialists who maybe know social media a little bit more than search engine, and just really making mistakes where you can't run a very efficient business. So it makes it difficult. And then that goes into the confidence, right? I mean, how confident are you with your processes and services if you are still trying to figure things out behind the scenes, right? And then, on the accounting side of it, you talked a little bit more about just really how how you're going to eat, being able to predict the business, knowing the leads that are coming in. And if SEO is delivering that, then you don't necessarily have to run out and do 3 or 4 other marketing tactics or strategies, because SEO is going to deliver the business that you need, and it becomes predictable at that point. So let's talk a little bit more about SEO, because you started going even deeper. You started talking about tactical SEO versus, or I guess organic SEO. Can you just, for someone's listening for the first time they're hearing the term SEO, just break it down. Maybe give us an overview of what SEO really is, and then we can dive into the details from there.
Sure. So SEO is basically getting your website to rank organically for different search terms that are relevant to your business, so that if you have visibility for your website for relevant terms, the expectation is that users will click on those results. You'll generate traffic and then generate leads or sales. So the way that you can go about doing that, we break it down into three different buckets, if you will. So first is content. The second one is what we call digital PR, which is just a nice term for backlinks. And then the third part is technical SEO. And so when you combine all three together, that's really when search engine optimization works. Content is the process of identifying keywords that have search volume and are relevant to your business, and then creating content that targets those keywords. Digital PR is essentially securing backlinks from external sites that, again, are both authoritative and relevant, so that your content outranks competitors. And then technical SEO clears the way for search engines to discover and index your content, so that they're able to understand what exists on your site. And so that's pretty much like the high level rundown between those, the top level SEO, and then you have content, digital PR, and tech SEO.
All right, let's go through those in a little bit more detail. You started with the content marketing, which is more about identifying keywords and creating content around that. So in this case, let's say if a small business owner, you know that people you sell, I don't know, you sell T-shirts, or let's just say T-shirts. You sell T-shirts, and maybe you sell whimsical T-shirts that have clever sayings on it. You may look to identify the keywords that T-shirt would obviously be one of it, but it might be other wearables or things like that. But you try to find what words people are actually searching for when they're looking to buy products, or how do you kind of go about that process to figure out what the right keywords are?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to do it. The first free way to do it is Google has a keyword research tool that's available through their Google Ads platform. So that's google.com and look for keyword research tool. You're able to type in your product or service, and then Google will give you a long list of associated keywords along with their volumes, as well as how difficult it is to actually rank for that. And Google provides you that information because an alternative to SEO is pay-per-click advertising. SEO takes a long time. It takes between 4 to 12 months, according to Google. And in our experience, we probably turn down 9 out of 10 leads that come to us because we're basically estimating that it's going to take them too long to produce a positive ROI. And so PPC and Google has recognized this, and that's why they will offer pay-per-click advertising and give that research out. Because if you don't want to wait and work and hope that you're going to rank on page one, then you have pay-per-click advertising as an immediate way to drive that traffic. So that's one way is Google Ads and their keyword research tool. Another way that's my favorite way is just doing audits of competitors and figuring out who's ranking really well now and what keywords do they rank for and which content is ranking for those keywords, and are you able to create better content than them to outrank them? So we'll use various SEO tools to do essentially like a backlink audit as well as a content audit. Our favorite one is Ahrefs, Ahrefs. That's the one that we use for our SEO agency, and it allows you to really get some great knowledge around on the content side of things.
Yeah, so if you're using Ahrefs, and I know that there are a few other ones that are out there, maybe some free versions as well, but you can then take a look and see what your competitors are actually doing in the space. What keywords are they using? Where do they rank? Who ranks for what? So sometimes there's some nuances there where if you reorder the words or swap out one word, you may have a little bit of a different result there. But using that, you can identify at least what is driving the most traffic to the sites and what words rank more. And then you said it takes a while, though, to have that organically start to shift. So just because, let's say, for apartment investing, if I wanted to rank my website for apartment investing, I can't just write an article about apartment investing and expect to be number one on Google in the next week or so. What are some best practices there when doing that? So if you do have some keywords where it is a little competitive, maybe not like T-shirts, but it is competitive. There's certainly other brands that are there. What are some things that we can do? I know in the past people used to just jam the keyword in as much as possible, but I know that's frowned upon by Google's algorithm now. So what are some ways we can try to organically create content that helps us boost?
So it kind of goes back to this whole conversation about specialization and determining what you're really good at and what makes you unique. And if you can qualitatively think through some of those unique points, then your next step is to go to keyword research and figure out what people are searching for that really would make you unique. So getting really, if it's apartment investing, what about an apartment investing that makes you unique? What type of apartment? Is it multifamily? Is it senior living? And then breaking it down by locality as well. So is it in Arizona? Is it in Phoenix? Is it in Scottsdale? Is it in Old Town Scottsdale? Is it on a particular street? Like, you could get really, really granular. And once you have these really like core areas of specialization, then you can cross-reference that with data that's readily available, with Ahrefs, with Google. Next step after that is then to create that content that really satisfies the search intent of someone who would be searching for something like that. So if someone's searching for apartment investing, what are they really trying to discover? And so if you're able to create content that helps satisfy what search engines think users want, then you'll probably have a better chance at ranking for that. So it starts with content. That's like a whole big part of it. But then you've got to promote it. So that's, if anyone knows how Google was founded back in I think it was 1997, there's a wonderful research paper that the Google founders wrote when they were computer science students at Stanford. And so if you look at that, there's their initial formulation of what Google is, and it's based off of this thing called PageRank. And so PageRank's determined based off of essentially links. And so if you look at how to promote content today, you essentially need links that point over to your content to help search engines identify that, hey, this content exists, but also this content is important. And so it's not just any link that you're trying to develop. Like if I have a site that sells Nikes and I'm looking to rank for apartment investing, a link from that Nike store isn't going to help my apartment investing very much. But if there's a couple, real estate blogs or apartment blogs or, something that's like local, links from them will help, because then Google's determining that, hey, these websites who are about apartments link over to this content about apartments. So therefore this content must be about apartments. And so that's essentially Google's and search engines' way to weed out the spammers and to help really understand the content of a page without actually reading the content.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a powerful tip. I hope everyone listening just took some notes there, because that is a very powerful tip for any business, not just multifamily investing, but any business owner. And there was something you said that was really key. I want to make sure we didn't gloss over it. But you talked about how really one of the first steps here is to understand what it is that you want to rank for. Get specific. Get as specific as you can. Not so much that you don't rank for other terms, but make sure you know what it is exactly you want to rank for, whether that is, in the case of apartment investing, if that is to the city or to the street level of the actual apartment. Make sure you're clear so you can actually rank and get what people are searching for. The piece, though, that really jumped out to me that I want to highlight is you said make sure that you create content that satisfies the search intent of the user. Too often, people write content or create content that maybe just shares their POV or, highlights the keywords. But if you're someone who's looking for an answer, when you start searching for something, you're typically looking for an answer. You're looking to consume a certain type of content. And if you get what you're looking for, that's when you're going to be fulfilled. And that's the kind of content that people are looking for. So as you are creating content, make sure that it satisfies the search intent. There's a great example that I hear often about, especially with recipes. If someone's looking to find out how to boil an egg, they don't need a long dissertation on how to, the origins of eggs, right? And how in the 1200s they used to use ostrich eggs, whatever. They don't want that. They want to know how to boil an egg, right? So make sure that you deliver that for them, and make sure the content actually satisfies their search intent and doesn't just become a 1,200 word article just because you read somewhere that it's got to be at a certain length or whatever the case may be. Just make sure you're creating the content you're looking for. And then the last part there is understanding the way backlinks work. And I want to dive into this next, but understanding the way backlinks work in the sense that if other websites are pointing to your website and they are the authorities in that space, that's going to really help your website develop and gain and borrow some of that authority. Talk a little bit more about what that means, and maybe even how small business owners can go about getting those backlinks from these authoritative websites.
Yeah. So links are a vote of confidence, essentially. Like Google needs some confidence and trust to be able to display your results, and links from other trusted sites help them trust you more. So the ways to get backlinks, this is the hardest thing to do in SEO. It is probably also maybe one of the hardest things to do in marketing, is convincing one person who runs a website to stop what they're doing in their day and add a link to a site. So the way is that probably the most natural way that you can do that is, number one, just creating great content. I found that if you're creating a blog post that eventually ranks for something that is valuable and frequently searched, then people will naturally link to that. So it's the chicken and the egg problem of like, how do you rank for something and then get people to link to you? But that's probably one of the most effective ways. And quite honestly, if I were to start with a brand new site, what I would do is another competitor audit. So I'd probably invest in a 7-day trial with Ahrefs for $7. And not to like, promote Ahrefs here, but like you could insert your competitor site who's doing a good job. You could figure out who's linking to them. You could find out how they got their links and then try to reverse engineer their success. You could take it one step further and put in multiple competitors, and you can figure out what are the commonalities of their link profiles, because then there's a higher likelihood that you could probably replicate all 3 competitors' successes if there's like one website that links to all 3. So really at the end of the day, you need some tools. Like you need some tools that help you identify how competitors have achieved success, and not only competitors, but how content has achieved success. Because if you're able to create content that's better than what already exists, a really easy way to build links is to figure out who's linking to the old content and introduce a more valuable piece of content that could replace that link. So there's it's a deep world with that. Those are just some of the top best practices with that.
No, excellent points there. Appreciate that. So basically, you want to create better content, right? Create great content and then learn what else is already getting backlinks. If you can figure out how your competitors are getting backlinks, especially if it's more than one, then you can start to replicate that experience. Another great tip that I heard was, if you can find maybe some dated content, some dated backlinks, and if you could create something that's fresher or newer, and maybe is, a better piece of content, you can go to those old backlinks and say, hey, I saw you had this article here, some things are dated. I actually did an updated version of that here if you want to check it out. So that may be a way to help whoever controls that content of that website in the first place, because obviously anybody running a website, you want to have accurate information, and if there's something on the site that's dated, then that may be an opportunity to come in and kind of play the hero and to get your content linked on that website. So some really good ideas there. I want to, we've talked about kind of content. We've talked about digital PR a little bit. I do want to get into technical SEO. But one thing I want to ask, this is another, difficult question, but as we talk about creating great content or better content, for most people, this is all subjective, right? How do you create better content than what exists? If it's lists, I know some folks may say, hey, if there's 7 tips to do XYZ, come out with 21 tips to do XYZ. But are there other thoughts or rules of thumb when it comes to creating better content than what your competitors already have in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A couple thoughts. Number one is, you're right, it is subjective. So how do you level the playing field to make it more technical? Because you are satisfying 2 audiences with the content that you're creating. You have readers, human beings, but you also have search engines who are trying to understand this content. So from a pure content creation standpoint, there was a pretty big Google algorithm update that came out in 2019 called BERT, B-E-R-T. And basically what it does is it uses natural language processing through machine learning to better understand content. And so there's actually, not to go like super crazy on everyone, but there's a natural language processing tool that Google has released where you're able to essentially copy and paste content, put it into their tool, and then allow you to see it how search engines kind of do, in terms of figuring out what are the main things that a search engine is deciphering in understanding that content. And so you can use a tool like that to essentially establish an outline to make sure that you hit the checklist items that would satisfy search intent. That would probably be like one of the more in-deep level tips from an SEO content creation standpoint, is using Google's NLP tool, natural language processing, copy competitor content, and identify those key elements or areas that you need to talk about frequently in order for Google to say, yes, this content does satisfy what a searcher is looking for. So that's one, and that's more of from the technical side of things. The other thing that you could do that's not subjective is, again, like outlink the competitors, so that Google's or search engines are saying that, hey, this content has more votes essentially from the internet. So therefore that content is better. So it comes down to, like you've got to have good content, but there's other elements that could help you tip the scales a little bit.
Is it fair to say that it's better to have good content and great promotion / links versus having great content and only good promotion and links?
If I had to choose one or the other, they're both important, but at the core of Google it has traditionally been links. So if I'm answering that question today in 2020, I'm probably saying links. If I'm answering that question in 2025, I don't know.
So it's not, the thing is, a lot of people will spend time coming up with great, compelling content and no one sees it, or a small number of people see it. And I think the main takeaway I'm having from this conversation is, while it's important to develop the strongest content that we can, if you really want to grow your business, you have to get that content in front of people. And the way these algorithms work, that's going to come down to promotion, whether that is through SEO or whatever other means you use to get that content in front of people. You're going to have to promote it and focus on getting it in front of them, as opposed to waiting until the content is 100% precise and perfect. You definitely want to make sure that you get it in front of people through whatever promotional means you have available to you. Real quick, last thing I want to talk about is just the technical SEO just a little bit here. Just give us a little bit more of, how that works. Is there anything we can do, or is that really more mechanics behind the scenes as far as, the website and how the systems kind of just crawl it and learn more about it?
Yeah, that one's fairly straightforward if you have the right tools that you're looking at. So a couple tools that I would recommend is Google's page speed tool. So it's a free tool you plug in your site, you figure out how fast your site is, and it gives you a bunch of recommendations on how to improve that, which goes back to user experience, which is really what technical SEO is at its core, is making sure that the experience from both a user perspective and from a search engine perspective is optimal. So I would type my website into Google page speed score, go back to my developer and say, hey, here's some recommendations I noticed. If we're 4 out of 100 on mobile devices, then there's some areas for opportunity to improve that. Another one that I'll just shameless plug, on the marketer's site, there's a free SEO audit tool that if you type in your website, then you'll be granted essentially an actionable report on how to better improve a web page for SEO. There's a lot of technical elements to that. Those are the top 2 that I would probably start with. And then beyond that, if you do sign up for like an Ahrefs trial, there's a site audit tool that will comb through every URL on your site, give you a site health score, and then a prioritized list of things to focus on. So it's a next level deepness beyond our little SEO audit tool.
Awesome. Great tips there. And I know one question I've received from a few different people is, when we're looking at building out our websites, there's different platforms, different host domains. Does that make a difference, which domain you go to as far as site speed and just kind of the authority when it comes to these algorithms?
Yeah, it doesn't matter as much as the theme does itself. So if you're looking at WordPress, you can be on WordPress because, that's like one of the leading content management systems that are out there. But if you have a theme that's just clunky and getting in the way of a search engine crawler, then it doesn't really do much good. So I think it's a combination of both. Like, I'm very, very, very biased to WordPress. We most of the time will actually turn clients away who are not on WordPress because, again, going back to our process conversation, we're able to better optimize WordPress sites. So if I were to start a business today, I would most definitely be on WordPress because it's easier to find help, which is easier from an expense standpoint to pay a WordPress developer or pay for maintenance. If I'm doing it myself, I'd probably still go with WordPress, but Squarespace is probably, another CMS that I've seen pretty good, do pretty well. Wix is one I would stay away from. I know that they have done a ton of work to better optimize their SEO. They still can't shake the opinion that I've got from them from way back.
Excellent. Hey, listen, great tips there, and I appreciate that. Let's move on to our Bullseye Round. You ready?
Yeah.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
there was a series of failures when I was trying to get that sponsor on the second road trip, which, man, I was like, went out to pimp my ride and tried to get on their show, made it to the last round, only to find that their executive producer went to Arizona State and I went to U of A and had a big U of A flag. So that was pretty disheartening when he said, "Hey, have a nice drive home because you guys are Wildcats." And then probably got rejected, like not so much failure, but rejection from like 300 plus people who were pitching on sponsoring this idea. And it all led us down to a sponsor who was literally 1 block away from the apartment that we were living in. So, I think that failures, a lot of it is rejection and getting through getting through rejection or getting through failure to get to the optimal, situation.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Google. Google.
Well, you've already given us Ahrefs, so yeah. That's another one too.
Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google Support. I guess one other one is they're very cagey about how to improve their optimization, but there's one resource that's how to improve your local presence on SEO, and they break it down into saying your site needs to be relevant. There's distance that's factored in and prominence, and that's probably the most I've seen disclosed from Google about how to rank better, like ever.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things, Ben Horowitz, especially prevalent now with all the stuff that's happening. And I'm reading Moneyball for probably like the 50th time. I love that book.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Celebrating short-term wins.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
To get very, very focused. As we mentioned, I started up here and funneled down. I wish I had a funnel and then branched out.
What are you curious about right now?
Undervalued SEO metrics.
Tell me more about that.
I'm reading Moneyball. The whole thing was the art of winning an unfair game. And as a small business, you're competing against companies that have more authority than you, more resources than you. So how can you still make SEO work for a small business?
Love that. All right. I know that you are out in Scottsdale, Arizona, where it is a scorcher today. So when it cools down, or maybe to go inside and get a little bit of relief, tell me the best place to grab a bite in Scottsdale. 2 spots. So one is this Spanish restaurant named Prado. So low-key, Phoenix is really good from a hospitality perspective. Our hotels are just like, and resorts are on point. And a lot of the best restaurants are actually on resorts and hotel properties. And so Prado is at the Mana Lucia. I discovered it by accident when I sat down and then noticed this little tapas bar that was vacant. And every Saturday night at 2 seatings, I think the first one's like 6 p.m., the other one's 8 p.m., you get a full-on tapas experience with this dedicated chef while everyone else behind you eats at like a table. And it's like, I've only been there once and I've wanted to go for every special occasion. So if you're looking for something cool and fancy, that's it. If you're looking for something low key, Craft 64, it's a little pizza spot that has pretty much every local beer in Arizona, ready to be enjoyed. Awesome. Brett, you've given us so much great information today. Thank you for explaining SEO and kind of walking us through the 3 ways it works, from content, digital PR, and then the technical side of SEO. I really appreciate you breaking it down and helping us understand things that we can do to drive more organic reach with our websites, and really helping small business owners figure out how do you leverage technology from this standpoint to grow. And I love too the thing that you talked about as far as really locking in and specializing on what you do from a digital marketing standpoint, instead of trying to do all digital marketing, really locking in on SEO so you can have better processes and really create a more efficient and effective platform for your clients. For those who are listening and interested in learning more about marketers, or maybe working with you, or want to reach out with further questions, what is the best way to get in touch?
Google Digital Marketing Company. Look for us on the first page, click on it, and then contact us through the contact form.
There you go. And marketers is MARKITORS. So it's not like
marketing
you traditionally sell marketers.
Yeah.
There you go. Marketing auditors. Love it. Well, listen, Brett, this has been a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you again for coming on the show. And we hope you have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.